She was the kind of student most people barely noticed. She sat near the window not because she wanted attention, but because it felt safer there. The light helped her see the keys clearly when she practiced on the old piano in the music room, and the distance helped her avoid curious eyes. She spoke softly, kept her head down, and never raised her hand unless she was asked directly. Many teachers mistook her silence for weakness. Some classmates thought she was just shy. No one really knew her story. She had joined the school only a few months earlier. Coming to a new place was not easy for her, especially one where students already had their own groups and routines. The school was known for its strong focus on arts, especially music. The music department was respected, and performances were taken seriously. For some students, music was just another subject. For her, it was something much deeper. Her piano teacher noticed her on the first day of class. He was experienced and confident, someone who believed he could judge talent quickly. When he saw her simple clothes and nervous posture, he assumed she lacked discipline and skill. He asked her basic questions, and her short answers did not impress him. When he asked about her background in music, she simply said she had practiced for a long time. That answer felt vague to him, almost careless. During lessons, he paid more attention to the loud and confident students. Those who spoke boldly or played with flashy movements got praise, even if they made mistakes. When it was her turn to play, she did exactly what was written, nothing extra. Her hands were steady, her timing accurate, but she did not try to show off. To the teacher, it felt dull. He believed real talent needed to be seen and heard loudly. Sometimes, he would stop her in the middle of playing and correct her sharply, even when the mistake was small or not there at all. The tone of his voice made the room feel cold. Other students began to look at her with pity or curiosity. She felt their eyes, but she never reacted. She nodded, said okay, and continued practicing quietly after class. What no one saw was how much effort she put in when she was alone. She often stayed after school, waiting until the hallway was empty. The old piano keys were worn and slightly out of tune, but she did not complain. She adjusted her touch, listened closely, and played again and again. Music was not something she wanted to prove to others. It was something that helped her breathe. At home, things were not easy. The house was small, and noise was not always welcome. She practiced with a keyboard that had missing paint and uneven keys. Still, she treated it with care. She remembered learning music not from expensive teachers, but from patience, repetition, and long nights of listening. Piano had been her escape during difficult times, though she never spoke about those days. Back at school, the teacher continued to overlook her progress. In his mind, she did not fit the image of a talented performer. She did not compete for attention or ask for praise. Her calm nature made him uncomfortable, as if she was hiding something. Instead of trying to understand her, he became stricter with her than others. One day, during class, he asked her to play a short piece without warning. The room went quiet. She walked to the piano, took a breath, and began. The sound was gentle but clear. Some students stopped whispering. A few even leaned forward. Before she could finish, the teacher stopped her and pointed out what he called a lack of emotion. He said she needed to play like she meant it, not like she was afraid. She listened without arguing. She had learned long ago that explaining herself rarely changed people's minds. Inside, though, she felt a familiar ache. Not anger, not sadness exactly, but something heavier. Still, she returned to her seat and wrote notes in her book, as if nothing had happened. After class, one student quietly told her she played well. She smiled politely and thanked them, but she did not let the words stay too long in her heart. Praise, like criticism, passed through her gently. She had learned to rely more on her own understanding than on others' opinions. The teacher, however, was growing more confident in his judgment. To him, she represented a student who needed to be taught a lesson, someone who should either step up or step aside. He believed pressure would expose the truth. What he did not realize was that pressure was something she had lived with for years. When an announcement was made about an upcoming school music event, the room buzzed with excitement. Students would perform in front of parents, teachers, and guests. It was a chance to shine. The teacher's eyes briefly rested on her, and a small, unreadable expression crossed his face. She noticed it but said nothing. She returned home that day with her usual calm steps, unaware of what was forming in the teacher's mind. She sat at her keyboard, closed her eyes, and played a familiar melody. Her fingers moved gently, but her thoughts were deep. Music filled the small room, steady and honest. Whatever was coming next, she would face it the same way she always had, quietly, with strength that did not need to be announced. The school announced that the music event would take place in the main hall, a place where every note would be heard clearly and every mistake would be visible. Students were excited, sharing their plans for the pieces they would play. Some talked about how they would impress their parents, and others hoped to gain praise from teachers. She listened quietly to the chatter, not joining in, but feeling the same mix of nerves and anticipation as everyone else. She knew the audience would be large, and that she could not hide behind her usual quietness in this setting. The teacher watched her closely during rehearsal. He had been thinking about her since the last lesson. He believed this event would be the perfect opportunity to show everyone that she was not as capable as she appeared. His plan was simple. Put her on stage with almost no preparation and let her mistakes become public. He expected the audience to gasp, perhaps some laughter, and certainly a reminder of who was really talented. In his mind, it would be a lesson for her and a display for others. When he called her over to discuss the performance, she felt a flutter of nerves but stayed calm. He told her the rules in a clipped, businesslike way. She would play a piece chosen by him, one she had never practiced in this setting. She would perform it in front of the entire school, with parents watching closely. She nodded silently, even though her heart beat faster. Inside, she was already thinking about how to approach the situation. She could feel the tension in the room, but she did not let it show. Other students noticed the conversation, and whispers started immediately. Some of them had seen her play before and knew she was skilled, though she never drew attention to herself. Others, however, were unsure what to expect. The teacher's stern expression made it clear he was not expecting much from her, which made some students curious and others uneasy. She did not speak, but she felt the weight of their attention. It was unfamiliar, but not frightening. After class, she went to the practice room. The piano there was older, its keys yellowed and slightly uneven. She sat down carefully, letting her hands rest on the keys for a moment. She played slowly, listening to each note, trying to remember the nuances that made music feel alive. She had not prepared this piece for public performance, but she trusted her training and her experience. Music was more than memorization. It was feeling, timing, and patience. She understood that instinctively. Hours passed as she practiced. Each attempt was careful, precise, and thoughtful. She corrected small mistakes immediately and repeated difficult passages until her fingers moved without conscious effort. She did not rush. Her mind stayed focused, blocking out any negative thoughts or doubt. She could hear the faint echoes from the empty hall, each note a reminder that she had been here before, alone, learning to trust herself. Slowly, the unfamiliar piece started to feel familiar under her hands. Meanwhile, the teacher prepared for the event in his own way. He walked through the hall, checking the stage and seating arrangements. He rehearsed the announcements he would make, imagining the reaction when she faltered. In his mind, it was going to be a moment of revelation for everyone. Proof that talent needed to be obvious and bold, not quiet and reserved. He did not consider that skill could exist in silence, that strength could be hidden until the right moment. The day of the event arrived, and the hall was filled with parents, students, and staff. The air buzzed with excitement and nerves. The lights were warm and bright, reflecting off the polished floor and shiny instruments. Performers went on stage one by one, each greeted with applause and smiles. She waited quietly backstage, her heart steady, though her hands tingled with anticipation. She reminded herself of all the practice, all the moments spent alone perfecting her craft. She trusted that what she had learned would guide her. When it was her turn, the teacher gave her a pointed look. He expected hesitation or fear, but she simply nodded, stepped onto the stage, and walked to the piano. The audience quieted as they noticed her small figure and calm demeanor. Some whispered, wondering if she could even manage the piece he had chosen. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and let her hands hover above the keys. The lights reflected softly on her hair, and for a moment, everything else faded. Her first notes were soft, almost delicate. The hall seemed to lean in, listening closely. There was no flashiness, no dramatic gestures, just precise movement, careful timing, and a sound that was both controlled and expressive. The audience was surprised at how quickly her music filled the space with clarity and emotion. They expected mistakes, tension, maybe even embarrassment. Instead, they were met with calm mastery. The teacher's expression shifted subtly. He had not anticipated this. His eyes widened slightly as he realized that her talent was real, and not just ordinary. She played with understanding, not merely memorization. Each phrase had emotion, each note connected to the next. The quiet student who had seemed fragile now held the entire hall's attention effortlessly. By the middle of the piece, the room was silent except for the sound of the piano. Parents exchanged astonished glances. Students leaned forward, and even the teacher seemed frozen in disbelief. The melody rose and fell, soft and loud in all the right places, with a confidence that came not from arrogance but from deep familiarity. Every mistake the teacher had predicted vanished. Her practice, patience, and understanding of music were undeniable. As she approached the final notes, she played with controlled strength, letting the last chords linger in the air. The audience remained still for a moment, as if afraid to breathe, then erupted in applause. The sound was loud, spontaneous, and overwhelming. People stood to show their respect, some with tears in their eyes. She lowered her hands slowly, looked up, and gave a small, polite bow. The smile on her face was calm, not boastful, but there was a quiet pride that radiated clearly. The teacher stepped back, speechless. He had planned to humiliate her, but the moment had completely reversed. Instead of failure, she had created awe. He realized that his assumptions had been wrong, that talent could not be judged by appearances or confidence alone. Other students whispered, congratulated her softly, and stared with new respect. The performance had turned into a lesson far greater than any he could have planned. She walked off the stage quietly, feeling relief but also a deep satisfaction. She had faced a challenge she did not seek, and had met it with all the skill and courage she had cultivated over the years. She did not need to prove herself loudly or show off. The music itself had done the talking. The audience had learned something important that day. Quiet determination often hides remarkable strength, and judgment should never come before understanding. Later, when the event ended, students and parents discussed her performance for hours. Many remembered her silence in class, her shy demeanor, and the teacher's previous doubts. They were surprised to see that someone so unassuming could command such attention with skill and elegance. She remained humble, as always, letting her music speak for her, while others reflected on what they had witnessed. Her presence, once overlooked, had become unforgettable. The day after the event, the school was buzzing with conversation. Students discussed the performance in hushed, excited tones, while teachers quietly reassessed their opinions. Even in the hallways, people stopped to mention the girl's skill. Some admitted they had underestimated her. Others whispered about the change they had seen in her presence. She walked through the corridors with her usual calm steps, noticing the reactions but not reacting outwardly. Inside, a quiet pride warmed her chest, but she did not flaunt it. In the music room, the piano waited for her. She approached it slowly like an old friend. Her hands rested lightly on the keys, recalling the notes she had played yesterday. The teacher entered the room, his expression unreadable. There was no anger now, but neither was there warmth. He had been caught off guard by her ability, and he was not used to being wrong. He cleared his throat, uncertain of what to say. She continued practicing, her focus steady, ignoring his presence. He finally spoke, asking her to play a simple piece, something to show that her skill yesterday was not just a one-time moment. She nodded politely and began. Each note was deliberate, each phrase flowing naturally. She did not hurry. She did not exaggerate. The teacher watched in silence, amazed at her consistency and precision. He realized that talent was not about grand gestures or attention-grabbing performance. It was about understanding and control. Every note she played confirmed this. Other students came and went, noticing her playing. Some stopped to listen quietly, understanding for the first time that her quiet nature did not mean lack of skill. She did not smile or draw attention, but the music itself captured their admiration. They whispered among themselves, surprised that someone who seemed so reserved could create such emotion through sound. Her music did not need applause or approval. It spoke on its own. The teacher, struggling with his pride, finally asked her why she never sought recognition or praise. She looked up for a moment, her eyes calm. She explained that music had always been personal for her, a way to express feelings she could not put into words. She played for herself first and only later shared it with others. The teacher listened, slowly realizing that his assumptions had been shallow and unfair. Her quiet dedication had been hidden in plain sight, and he had failed to notice it. Later that week, the teacher decided to introduce her to more challenging pieces. This time, his tone was different. There was respect, not condescension. She took the challenge seriously, exploring new compositions, experimenting with dynamics, and learning subtle techniques. Each session, she surprised herself with her growth and strength. The teacher, now a reluctant supporter, began to appreciate not just her skill, but her patience and determination. He even admitted quietly that he had judged her too quickly before. Her classmates began to treat her differently. No longer did they whisper or look on with doubt. Some asked for advice on difficult pieces. Others simply listened when she played, absorbing the quiet power of her music. She did not mind the attention, but she did not seek it either. She focused on her practice, letting her skill grow naturally, with a calm determination that others admired from afar. Even outside the music room, things began to change. Teachers noticed her diligence in other subjects, her thoughtfulness in class discussions, and her steady work ethic. The students who had once doubted her now asked for her input or guidance. Her presence became a quiet source of inspiration, a reminder that patience, focus, and humility often conceal great strength. People began to understand that there is more to talent than meeting expectations or performing for approval. One afternoon, she stayed late after school, practicing a particularly challenging composition. The teacher lingered at the doorway, watching her hands move effortlessly across the keys. He noticed her calm demeanor, her focus, and the subtle way she infused emotion into each phrase. He realized that her true strength was not just skill, but the depth of understanding and the quiet confidence that came from years of dedication. He also understood that attempting to embarrass her had revealed far more about his own biases than hers. As she finished, she looked up at him briefly, smiled softly, and left the room. The teacher stood silently, reflecting on the lesson he had learned. He had wanted to humiliate her, but instead he had been humbled. The students who had observed her performance yesterday were right. Talent cannot always be judged at first glance. The experience reshaped his approach to teaching, making him more thoughtful, patient, and observant. The girl continued her daily routine, unaffected outwardly by the attention or respect she now received. She remained quiet in class, focused in her practice, and steady in her demeanor. Yet, there was a subtle change within her. She had faced doubt, judgment, and challenge, and had met it with skill and composure. Her confidence grew, not through words or applause, but through the knowledge that she could face difficulty and succeed on her own terms. In the coming weeks, the school community slowly began to recognize the value of quiet determination. Teachers looked beyond appearances, students learned to appreciate effort and depth, and the girl continued to grow both in skill and in presence. Her story became a quiet legend within the school, a reminder that true talent often lies hidden, and that understanding it requires patience, observation, and an open mind. Her journey was far from over. Challenges would continue to come, as they always do, But she had proven to herself and to others that judgment based on appearances is often wrong. Music remained her anchor, her way of expressing emotion and connecting with the world. And though she remained humble, those around her could no longer ignore the quiet power she carried within, a power that could not be measured by noise, showiness, or immediate recognition. The next big school event was approaching, a performance that would gather students, parents, and local guests. Excitement filled the air as rehearsals began, but this time there was a different feeling surrounding her. Students who had once whispered or doubted her now looked at her with quiet admiration. Teachers, too, had begun to notice that her skill was real, deep, and consistent. She moved through the corridors with her usual calm demeanor, aware of the attention but unaffected by it. Her focus remained on the music as it always had. The teacher, still unsettled by the last performance, had changed his approach. He no longer tried to undermine her, though he still maintained his strict discipline. There was a sense of caution in the way he spoke to her, an unspoken acknowledgement that he could not take her talent lightly. He assigned her a challenging piece, more complicated than any she had played publicly before. It was a test not only of skill but of her ability to remain composed under pressure. She accepted the challenge silently, her mind already planning how to approach it. Back in the practice room, she sat at the piano, her fingers brushing the keys as if greeting an old friend. She played slowly at first, exploring the new composition, feeling its rhythm, and understanding its emotional flow. Each note required careful attention, each phrase demanded patience. She repeated difficult sections over and over, gradually shaping the piece into something that felt like her own. Her concentration was complete, her focus unwavering. Time passed unnoticed as she immersed herself in the music, leaving no room for fear or doubt. Word of her upcoming performance spread quickly through the school. Some students began to feel nervous, worried that they would be overshadowed by her presence. Others were inspired, motivated to practice harder themselves. Parents attending the event had heard about her previous performance and were eager to witness her skill firsthand. She did not think about these expectations. Her attention remained entirely on her preparation, on understanding the music deeply and expressing it honestly. On the day of the event, the hall was filled to capacity. The lights shone brightly on the stage, highlighting the instruments and performers waiting in anticipation. The audience buzzed with conversation, parents sharing excitement and curiosity about what they were about to hear. She stood backstage, her calm demeanor unshaken. Her fingers itched to play, but she allowed herself a moment to breathe, centering her mind and focusing on the piece she had prepared so carefully. When her turn came, the teacher gave a brief, professional introduction. The audience's attention turned toward her. She walked onto the stage gracefully, approached the piano, and sat down. The first notes were soft, careful, and precise. The audience fell silent, sensing the confidence beneath her calm exterior. She did not rush, nor did she attempt to dazzle with flashy techniques. Instead, she let the music speak, letting each note carry emotion and meaning, as if she were telling a story without words. As the piece progressed, her skill became evident to everyone present. Her fingers moved effortlessly, blending speed with control, power with delicacy. She navigated complex passages with ease, maintaining a steady rhythm and a deep sense of expression. The audience was captivated. They leaned forward, watching her hands, listening intently to the rich, expressive sound that filled the hall. There was a natural flow to her performance, a balance of technical mastery and emotional depth that made the music come alive. The teacher watched, unable to hide the mix of awe and regret on his face. He had planned to oversee a routine performance, maybe even offer small criticism, but he found himself completely captivated. His previous judgments seemed foolish in light of what he was witnessing. He realized that her talent could not be diminished or hidden. Every note she played was a testament to years of quiet practice, patience, and dedication. The audience, too, reacted. Some parents whispered in astonishment, others had tears in their eyes, and students were stunned into silence. It was clear that what they had expected, a simple recital, had transformed into something extraordinary. Her calm, unassuming presence on stage contrasted with the strength and power of her music, making the performance even more striking. She was not just playing. She was conveying emotion, telling a story, and commanding attention without a single dramatic gesture. As she approached the final passages, her confidence grew. She let the music rise and fall naturally, allowing the dynamics of the piece to create a sense of movement and emotion. The audience felt every subtle change in tempo, every soft note, every strong chord. By the time she reached the final chords, the hall was completely absorbed in the sound. The last note lingered in the air, a perfect conclusion to the piece, leaving the audience breathless for a moment before the applause erupted. The sound of clapping and cheering filled the hall, overwhelming and genuine. People stood to show their appreciation, recognizing the extraordinary talent they had just witnessed. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the beauty and depth of her performance. The teacher stood silently, reflecting on his own assumptions and the lesson he had been forced to learn. He had intended to supervise, perhaps correct, but he had been humbled by her skill and composure. She lowered her hands from the keys, her expression calm and poised. She bowed slightly, acknowledging the applause without arrogance. Her smile was gentle, a reflection of quiet satisfaction and humility. She had faced the challenge she had been given, met it with skill and focus, and conveyed something far more important than just technical proficiency. She had shared her dedication, her understanding of music, and her resilience. After leaving the stage, she returned backstage, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. The applause and admiration were not the reason she played. She played for the music itself. Yet she could not ignore the way the audience had responded, the way the performance had touched people. Even the teacher, who had once doubted her, approached quietly and nodded in acknowledgement. His respect was evident, a silent recognition of her talent and perseverance. In the days that followed, conversations about her performance continued. Students who had once ignored her now asked questions, sought advice, and watched her play with admiration. Teachers spoke about her dedication, her calmness under pressure, and the depth of her skill. Parents discussed her performance with wonder, often remarking on how someone so quiet could command such presence through music. She did not change herself or seek attention. Her focus remained on practice, growth, and understanding. The event became a turning point, not just for her, but for the school community. People began to see the value of quiet determination, the importance of patience, and the power of skill developed over time. The girl continued to practice diligently, preparing for the next challenge, confident in her ability to face it with grace and focus. Her story, once a simple tale of a quiet student, had become an example of resilience, dedication, and the quiet strength that can inspire those around her. After the performance, the girl returned to her routine with the same calm demeanor she had always carried. Despite the overwhelming applause and admiration, she did not let it change her. She still arrived early to practice, focused on understanding each piece fully before moving on. The school had changed around her, though. Students now watched her with respect, often quietly observing her technique or asking for advice. Teachers treated her differently, acknowledging the dedication and depth of skill she displayed. Even the once critical piano teacher had learned to hold his judgments back, understanding that true talent revealed itself only through patience and attention. Parents and visitors who had witnessed her performance continued to speak of it for days. They marveled at how someone so quiet and reserved could produce such emotion and mastery at the piano. Her story spread beyond the school, inspiring other students who often felt overlooked or underestimated. Many realized that outward confidence was not the only indicator of talent, and that persistence, patience, and focus could bring remarkable results. The girl had become an example, though she herself never sought recognition. In the music room, she spent hours each day perfecting her craft. New pieces were more challenging than before, yet she approached them with careful planning and steady patience. She would break down complex sections, repeat difficult passages, and listen closely to every sound. Her mind was meticulous, focused entirely on improvement and expression. The more she practiced, the more she discovered subtle nuances in the music, and each discovery filled her with quiet satisfaction. Her growth was noticeable not only to her teachers but to her peers, who often stopped to watch her play, absorbing her concentration and precision. The piano teacher, once eager to embarrass her, now observed her in awe. He had witnessed her skill in 2 major performances, and he understood the error of his assumptions. Quietly, he began to encourage her in ways he never had before. He suggested more advanced compositions, gave technical advice, and allowed her the freedom to explore emotion in her playing. He had learned that guidance worked best when paired with respect, and that forcing a student under false assumptions only hindered learning. Watching her dedication, he reflected on his own biases and realized how often he had misjudged students before. Other students began to see her as a mentor, though she never assumed that role formally. Some struggled with difficult pieces and would quietly ask her for guidance. She responded patiently, showing them techniques, explaining rhythms, and demonstrating passages slowly. Her advice was never condescending. It was always calm, practical, and focused on helping others grow. She had become a silent leader, inspiring others not by words but by example and skill. Her presence in the music room became a source of motivation, a reminder that consistent effort and humility could achieve excellence. Outside of music, she maintained the same dedication and steadiness. Teachers noticed her attention to detail in other subjects, her patience in group work, and her ability to handle challenges without complaint. Classmates who had once underestimated her now sought her input in discussions and projects. She did not boast about her achievements, but the quiet respect she earned was undeniable. People realized that character, like talent, could not be judged by appearances alone, and that perseverance and composure often held more value than outward confidence. The following year, another school-wide event was announced, this time a larger competition that drew audiences from nearby schools. She was asked to perform again, a responsibility she accepted with quiet focus. This time, her performance was anticipated not as a surprise, but as a highlight of the event. The piece she chose was intricate, with long passages that required technical skill and deep emotional understanding. She practiced diligently, breaking down every section, exploring expression, and perfecting timing. Her preparation was methodical, thorough, and entirely self-driven. When the day arrived, the hall was full once again. The lights shone brightly, reflecting off polished floors and instruments. Parents, teachers, and students waited eagerly. She walked onto the stage with calm steps, greeted by polite applause. Sitting at the piano, she allowed herself a single moment to breathe, then began. The music started gently, with a clarity that immediately captured attention. Each note was deliberate, each phrase carefully shaped. The hall fell silent, listening as her hands moved across the keys with precision and grace. As the piece progressed, the audience became aware of her mastery. Every complex passage was handled effortlessly, every emotional transition conveyed with depth. She played not just with technique but with understanding, allowing the music to tell a story. The hall was captivated, moved by the subtle power of her performance. Parents and students alike watched in awe, witnessing a combination of skill, patience, and quiet determination that few could replicate. The teacher, now a supporter rather than a critic, watched closely. He had learned the most important lesson from his own mistake. Talent was not measured by outward confidence or immediate impression, but by dedication, resilience, and genuine understanding. He felt proud of her growth, not just as a musician but as a person. He understood that his initial desire to embarrass her had been replaced with deep respect and admiration. The performance demonstrated what could be achieved through consistent effort and a steady, focused mind. As she reached the final chords, she allowed them to linger, filling the hall with a resonant sound that left the audience silent for a heartbeat before applause erupted. The reaction was immediate, powerful, and heartfelt. People stood, clapping and cheering, some moved to tears. Her calm smile and slight bow acknowledged their response without seeking it. She had once again let the music speak for itself, proving that skill, dedication, and quiet strength could inspire and captivate more than any show of arrogance or display. After leaving the stage, she returned backstage, feeling a sense of accomplishment and inner satisfaction. The applause, though overwhelming, was secondary to the knowledge that she had prepared, performed, and expressed herself fully. The audience had recognized the result of years of quiet effort and dedication, and in that recognition, there was validation but not vanity. She had proven to herself, her peers, and even her former critic teacher, that talent could not be hidden, and that patience and focus were as powerful as any outward display. In the days that followed, her story became well known in the school and the surrounding community. Students who had once doubted themselves or been overlooked drew inspiration from her example. Teachers shared her story as a lesson in patience, observation, and the dangers of quick judgment. Parents and local visitors spoke of the impact of her performance and the message it carried about dedication, humility, and quiet strength. She never sought recognition, but the respect and admiration she received were inevitable. She continued to practice daily, exploring new compositions, mastering difficult techniques, and refining her emotional expression. Each performance, each practice session, added to her growth and confidence. She remained humble, consistent, and focused, aware that true mastery came not from applause but from continuous learning and self-discipline. Her journey showed that resilience, patience, and inner strength could overcome doubt and judgment, and that true talent, when nurtured, always finds a way to shine. Through her music and her presence, she had taught a lasting lesson. Judgment based on appearances is unreliable, skill and talent require dedication, and quiet determination can surpass expectations. Her story became a quiet legend in the school, inspiring others to trust their own efforts, stay patient, and let their true abilities speak for themselves. In every note she played, she carried the message that strength and excellence often reside in silence, and that those who persevere can transform doubt into admiration and surprise into respect.